Well, the can is officially cracked. So what could that mean? Well, it means we're going to be talking to Bobby Gerould. This is part number 1 of 2 of this special interview where Bobby talked about his career in motorsports broadcasting as well as television. We talked about music. We talked about his love for basketball and all sorts of great things. That's coming up next here on Getting Up to Speed. Hello, I'm Ben Dethridge, and I'm the host of Getting Up to Speed. We talk to sprint car drivers from the Pacific Coast, whether they race in Oregon, Washington, California. If they run it, we're going to talk about it. Also branch out a little bit, as well as drivers that perhaps are from here that race elsewhere, or some drivers that come in and try and take some money from the West Coast. In these episodes, we talk about past experience, past seasons, as well as upcoming races, as well as how's the season going. We hope you enjoy these episodes. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps us out. And stay tuned for more and more content. Now let's get in the interview. Well, here he is, Bobby Gerould. Bobby, it's great to have you here. This is going to be a fun conversation from one announcer to the other. And yeah, I'm ready to hear some great stuff.
How are you today, Ben?
Well, it's not raining here in Oregon today. It's just a little cloudy, a little sunshine, so I'll take it. It's still cold, but it could be raining and miserable. So how about you?
Yeah, no, the weather's good here in Northern California. It's sunny today. I was getting a kick out of Justin Henderson posted something today about being, I think he's in South Dakota, and how it was over 30 degrees today in South Dakota, so that meant short sleeves and windows down. So
Yeah.
It's all relative, right?
Awesome. Yeah. You guys had a spell of some Pacific Northwest style weather first part of the year, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was crazy around here. We had the high winds, and a lot of people had their houses damaged because trees fell on them and stuff like that. So we got lucky here. Everything was okay other than just, some branches and stuff like that. But
Sure.
all is well.
Awesome. Yeah, I was headed to Cocopah Speedway on New Year's Day, and it was like, holy smokes, like the rice fields around Williams and stuff was looking like rice fields. So
yeah.
And just some other things of going on Highway 99 in some parts. It's like, well, some of it was closed. It's like, good Lord, like this is baffling.
Yeah, they said it was one of those once every 50-year events type deals. So it was pretty crazy there for a while, right around New Year's, no doubt about it. But I think everybody's kind of thawing out here a little bit. I'm sure there's a lot of moisture deep down in some of these racetracks, though, in Northern and Central California. So we could see some cowboy up style stuff here early in the year.
Sure. And speaking of which, 2023, I guess we'll just start off with it. What is that looking like for you?
Well, from a racing standpoint, I'm scaling back. After years and years and years of rolling down Highway 99 to go to Hanford and Tulare, I've decided to step away from that and just kind of looking at pursuing some other opportunities in my life in basketball and in music and some of the stuff I like to do. If it might be a different story if Hanford and Tulare's racetracks were closer to, my home in Rockland, but
sure.
It's a pretty good drive, 3.5, 4 hours usually, with a stop one way. And it just, after all those years, it just thought it was time to step back a little bit. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, still pursuing other things, which is good. You're keeping yourself occupied.
Oh yeah. No, I'm definitely not at a point where I'm ready to stop doing stuff. It's just more kind of taking an inventory of where I'm at in life, and I just had my 55th birthday, and you start hitting some of those milestone birthdays. You start thinking about what does the future hold, and I think all of us in the racing world know. Or at least we should know that we shouldn't take anything for granted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You gotta live each day and try to make the most of your time, because no one knows when your time's going to be up. And so, you know, I enjoy going to the races, but I don't enjoy it the way that I once did when I was younger. And it was, you know, the kids were all my age that were racing, you know, and I was kind of living the demographic, so to say.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of a deal where my wife is really busy. She works in education, so she rarely travels with me at all. So most of the time it's just me by myself, you know, going down the road. And so it's just not as enjoyable to me as it once was. And so at some point, I guess you kind of just, you know, take an inventory and say, well, you know, I wonder what life would be like if I wasn't committing, you know, 20 nights a year, which end up, you know, with when you're traveling, ends up being 40 to 45 nights a year. Doing racing stuff. I wonder what would happen if I was spending that time putting it towards basketball without any interruptions, because it's been a deal in the past. I really love basketball, and
Sure.
I've had some jobs in basketball, but then there's been some stuff that I've had to say no to because, well, you know, I could do it, but is it okay if I take off this, you know, because the Gold Cup's coming up, or you know, or, well, no, I can't do that because it's the Trophy Cup, and, you know, so we're going to see what life's like without racing as a major point. And, you know, as I told Peter Murphy and Steve Faria, you know, the promoters respectively at Hanford and Tulare, who've been really good to me, you know, I might find out in 1 year of not doing it that I really miss it, or I might find out that, you know, life goes on without racing. So, I don't know, but I'm ready to find out, you know,
Sure.
what happens.
Well, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's kind of a deal where, you know, quite honestly, I didn't see much room for advancement for me right now in racing. I mean, I've kind of plateaued at where I'm at, had some, you know, great opportunities, but things are so different now in the streaming age. And, you know, there's a whole new generation of racers and race announcers that are just way more dialed in and plugged in to it, that are living the demographic. And so, you know, in some respects, and I know this is probably way more than you bargained for here with
totally
this answer, but, you know, I'm a pretty deep thinker and have anxiety issues, and it's tough sometimes to say, get prepared, get yourself into the right mind state to do the job that the fans deserve and that the racers deserve. And sometimes I feel like, man, I know there's so many people who know so much more about racing right now than I do, that I felt like I was doing a little bit of a disservice. So that's a small part of it too.
Sure. And
there were all kinds of other issues. You know, I've had some I don't know if I would call it disagreements, but definitely some sideways thoughts about how some of the streaming stuff works and getting paid from streaming companies and stuff like that. It just started to become a bit of a headache, and that's a part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you bring something up, you know, something that, you know, hits close to me with, you know, like announcing you know, a lot of people, I think, you know, your common race fan, a lot of people maybe listening to this, or even drivers, think that, oh, you're just going up there and you're just talking, you're just, you know, shooting the breeze. It's like, no, there's tons of preparation for it. There's you know, it's physically and mentally taxing. Like, you know, there'll be times at the end of the night where, like, race is over, I need to go to sleep because I'm waxed out, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, Super Nationals, I was there for 10 days, or, you know, like 8 days, I think, actually, of racing. And it was over 100 hours on the racetrack with cars on it, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, in Red Bluff, you know, Red Bluff takes a lot. That's like a 12-hour workday, you know? And it's, yeah, no. And, you know, the whole thing of, you know, I even get jitterbugs if there's a cage kart race and there's only like 12 cars there, you know? Just as much as if there's 250 cars.
Right, because you want to do well for yourself and put your best foot forward, and
Sure.
I mean, I think that's anyone who is responsible and feels like they want to be professional and do a good job. You want to do it, and quite frankly, there were some times where I could have been a whole lot more professional, and but I would just get run down and didn't have the energy to do it. And that's hard for me. It's hard to be honest with yourself and
Sure.
and say, you know what. And like I said, that's not all of it. I still feel like when I am prepared, I felt like I could do a good job.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But it's just, like I said, I think it was just time.
Yeah. No doubt. That's understandable. I guess we'll lead off with another wide open question. How did all this start with you getting into motorsports broadcasting?
Well, my dad was the track announcer at West Capitol Raceway, Gerould. So he was announcing there from the time I was born, and they started taking me to the track probably at the age of 2. And I sat right there by my dad's side every Saturday night and through, all the glory years of West Capitol Raceway.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking like 1970 through 1980 until the track shut down. And then when the track did shut down, the promoter at West Capitol was John Padgett,
Mm-hmm.
and he had started taking on Placerville, Dixon, and Chico as promotion places. My dad would announce all of those tracks too in some form or fashion, but always did Chico on Friday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would travel there, when I was 13 or 14 years old. After West Capitol closed, then we would go to Chico every Friday. And of course, the Gold Cup moved to Chico. And so then probably about the time I was 16 or 17, I'd say right in there, maybe even 15, I'd start making some announcements and stuff like that. Like while my dad was doing his pit walk, you had to be 16 to get in the pits, so I couldn't even get in the pits, but I'd be up there in the announcer's booth, and, I'd kind of welcome people, the early arrivals, and tell them where the concession stands were and where the bathrooms were and stuff like that. So it started out, really with some small time stuff. And then I took a tape recorder, at the urging of my dad, or the nudging of my dad, I guess you would say. He, you should start, thinking about trying to do some interviews every once in a while.
Uh-huh.
Took a tape recorder, I think it was 84, to a race in Petaluma, California, and did some interviews. I remember interviewing Leroy Van Connet, who was the great, Hall of Famer, and he was a NARC champion at the time. And Leroy's it can be short with his answers and stuff like that. So I remember interviewing him and thinking, man, this is hard, and I'm not very good at this.
Yeah. Way to start things off. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the next year, the Northern Auto Racing Club, they were, wireless microphones were just starting to become a thing, and they wanted to have an infield announcer, and so they hired me as the infield announcer. I think I made $25 a night.
Nice.
I would go to the NARC races and do interviews, but it was great training. Then I would interview 8 to 10 guys a night. There wasn't really a format the way there is today, as far as like, you're going to interview someone for the dash draw or
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. I mean, you knew you were going to interview the dash winner and the main event winner, but it was also just like, hey, if there's guys out walking the track, go put a mic in their face and,
Sure.
During the downtime and do some interviews. So I really kind of cut my teeth and earned a lot of experience doing it that way.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's kind of how I got started with big track stuff, not knowing what I was going to be able to do and stuff. And, it's for those upcoming announcers or thinking about announcing, it's okay to start small at first.
Oh, absolutely. It's actually, preferred, I would say.
Sure.
You don't want to jump right in, and you definitely should spend some time around someone else and,
Mm-hmm.
and see how they prepare, see what the pit walk is about. There's so many little things that go into it.
Sure. Yeah, and it also gives you developmental growth, which I think is very important. Like even me, like I've been doing this, coming on 20 years, And like, I feel like I still have potential. I still have room for growth. I'm not settling for where I'm at because I think I have more to offer kind of deal. And, you know, you go through the peaks, the valleys, and the plateaus and stuff, and it can be frustrating, it can be rewarding, it can be jubilant, or all three of those feelings in one moment. But, you know, I figure and I'm sure you're the same way, at least, you know, for several years of like, if I just leave myself room for some growth, like sky's the limit.
Yeah. It's just like racers getting laps. I mean, you just gotta keep on doing it. And, you know, there's, you know, all the different situations that can come up during a night of announcing, you
Sure.
know, and it's unpredictable. I mean, and it ranges from, having to make an announcement that someone left their lights on in the parking lot to having to make an announcement that someone has passed away.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It really is a wide range of stuff that you're going to go through on the microphone if you're a PA announcer. And like I say, today, I think it's gotten that much tougher because it used to just be that you were a PA announcer.
Sure.
And what you said came and went. Nobody recorded it.
Yeah.
There wasn't. And now, man, you say one thing wrong, you know, someone in Pennsylvania is going to call you out for it because, you know, they misinterpreted something or didn't have the context it's just a lot more of a pain in the butt now.
Sure.
And that's why I think the streaming companies really are getting over on announcers and need to be rewarding announcers for that, basically.
Sure. Well, and especially if they're doing a great job, you know, like streaming exposed so much, you know, during the COVID time and everything. Like Stephanie and I would spend so much time watching races or like watching replays, and there were, you know, the likelihood of me going to Williams Grove or Lincoln or Port Royal or Attica, Fremont, or even Knoxville, you know, is it possible? Sure. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No. But, you know, to see the racing there and stuff, it was great. The other flip of the coin, not against those racetracks in particular, but you watch some races, it's like, man, you know, like I'm going to hit the mute button here. No disrespect, but, you know, it's going to be a little bit more of an enjoyable experience. So, yeah, it can expose you and make you, or it can really cut you down to the knees.
Yep, absolutely. It's it's worth something. That's kind of been my whole point. And it lives with you forever. I mean, that's the thing that I try to really point out is that, you know, whether it's a mistake or it's a great call or something, you know, it can be replayed in 10 years, it can be replayed in 20 years.
Sure.
There's just, and that's got to be worth something because you're kind of putting your neck out there to do it. And from my standpoint, when I started, there wasn't that. So
correct.
It came along additionally. And so that's why I've always said, well, you know, the streaming company needs to pay me a little something. And I never felt like it was a fair wage that I was getting from any streaming company. Maybe, I might take that back a little bit. There's been a couple the cushion has been fair to me for years at the Trophy Cup, but there's been some others where I felt like it was not enough money and definitely a pain in the butt to try to get the money.
Yeah, well, and also, too, for folks that don't know, you know, as an announcer, it is a whole different animal calling just pay-per-view, and it's a whole nother animal calling PA, and you combine the two together, it's tricky. You know, you want to interact with the audience that's there because that's the paying audience, like that's tangible right in front of you, but you also want to be acknowledged and clue in, like, hey, we got a replay coming up. Hey, if you're tuning in at home, you know, it gets tricky, and sometimes you get caught in the moment of like, oh man, I'm just catering too much to this, or you balance it. Yeah, absolutely. It's like doing a simulcast on TV and radio in the old days. So yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah, and for the last few years, you've been predominantly, you know, Hanford, I guess we can call it King Speedway again, and Thunderbolt Raceway, and then Trophy Cup, you've been a staple there. Calistoga, you did a lot of stuff there as well, especially the Louis Vermeil. Yeah, it's a shame that we haven't been able to go to Calistoga. It's one of my favorite places. And you know, that probably has a little something to do with it too. Again, it's just like
the places that were willing to employ me, are none of them are anywhere around my house.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's just, I just wish there was something closer. I mean, I used to do stuff at Chico for many years, but they have Troy Hennig now, and he does a great job. And so, he's got that on lockdown, and, Gary Thomas does a bunch of good stuff and around here as well. And so he has Stockton, and there's just really not room for me anywhere around home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. You can get yourself kind of boxed out, I guess, sometimes. And it's kind of the nature of the beast, the double-edged sword.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about basketball. That's a huge passion of yours. How did that start? And kind of, what are some, I know that you've got some involvement where you track stats and you're very active in that part of your life.
Yeah. I've just been a long time basketball fan. I played Little League baseball and wasn't very good at it, and found the, baseball practice in the middle of a summer, standing out in the outfield just wasn't for me.
Sure.
And so, I kind of was getting on my parents about, I really like basketball, but there was really no organized leagues around, where I was at. The Asian churches had a really good organization for those kids, but there was nothing happening for me. I played a little bit of high school basketball and for like 2 years JV, and then I went to Sac State and got real close with the basketball coach there, Joey Anders, and ended up helping him out as kind of like a student assistant statistician type guy during college, all the while, that I was doing racing stuff. And in the meantime, the Sacramento Kings had moved to Sacramento, and my dad became their play-by-play announcer. So then all of a sudden I had the NBA in my life. So I've always kind of been around it. Spent a couple of years working for the Kings, and things didn't work out there, and it kind of, led my path back towards racing and doing stuff on TV that, in hindsight, I wish I would have turned down some of those gigs. I was doing demolition derbies and tractor pulls and all kinds of junk on TNN that, it just really wasn't interesting to me at all. It's interesting to some other folks, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But I was young and didn't know how to say no at the time. So, I did some gigs like that, and but basketball has kind of always been a love. And so I started a website that's evolved into another website, and it's called hoopobsession.com. And I go around to different events covering the NBA G League, NBA Summer League, the NBA Draft, kind of my area of expertise.
Sure. I mean, that sounds like so much fun because you get to see, some upcoming talent and some great interactions, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. It is fun, and I just really enjoy the game, and I spent so much time. I mentioned the anxiety. I have obsessive compulsive disorder too,
sure.
So I'm really, when I get into my stats and stuff like that, I'm kind of a completist, and so after years and years and years of just stockpiling all this stuff, in my brain, I just feel like I need to find a way to monetize that somehow before
Sure.
it's too late.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. Like, I've reached out to you about some stuff before too, and you've been a great help of like tracking down some things, or that you have it on, Hammer Down USA. I'm able to, research it and all sorts of things like that. And I'm a completist. It's like, if all I got is a top 3, I really don't have anything, because I want to make sure, okay, this guy, he finished 18th, in 2001, like
right.
a complete record, not just a partial, so I totally get it.
Yeah, that's a tip for all the announcers out there too. One of the things that we could all do better is, I hear a lot of announcers say, well, he's a multi-time champion.
Sure.
It's like, dude, know it. Like,
yeah.
how,
write it down.
Let's know. Was it 7? Was it 3? Was
Sure.
it 5? Did he win 15 of them?
Sure.
Let's know. Let's know. We can all be better that way.
Yeah. Well, 2 is multiple, right? So,
Right.
yeah. Well, yeah,
Right.
and there's some guys, and not to discredit them or say that they're terrible people or anything, but
No.
I think they won this race, or a few years back I think he did really well, and it's just I'm got that OCD too, and just that I got to know, because I'm always thinking of, all right, what is a fan? Because at the end of the day, racetrack announcers are probably some of the biggest fans there are, and you think ahead of like what the hardcore fan would ask. Well, how many, like, I don't know how many times I've been on a road trip with Brian Crockett, like 10 hours straight after Trophy Cup back to Oregon. And it's like, well, who drove that car? I'm like, oh, and so you go through it and, and you think ahead of like, but did you know also that he drove for this guy, or, this guy had his brother or something. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep a database, that's one of my things. And that way you can stay on top of it. And I'm not discrediting anyone specifically as an announcer either. I just think it's just one of those things. It's like if you're the announcer, you need to know this stuff, and you should be educating the race fans and giving them a reason to care about these drivers.
Yeah.
That's what it's ultimately all about, whether it's TV, live stream, PA.
Sure.
The goal should be to make the fans care about the drivers enough that they have a vested interest in.
Exactly. And I completely agree with you on that. A goal, it's a hard goal, especially when there's a lot of cars. Every driver has a story, whether it be some crazy statistic, like he's got 200 starts here, but he's never had a top 10. You just make something out of it, and or outside of the race car, and that's where the pit walks really help. Get to know the drivers, get to know their as best you can, their car owners, their families, or whatever. Make impressions both sides of the road.
Absolutely.
So
got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and so like, who would you say are some of your favorite basketball players of all time?
Oh, basketball.
Oh man, that's probably a loaded question.
Yeah. George the Iceman Gervin was always my childhood guy. My dad took me to go see the Iceman play the Warriors in Oakland, when I was a little kid, and my dad, being on TV, he worked at the local NBC affiliate, KCRA in Sacramento.
Okay.
And so he did the nightly sports there. So he would get the credentials and stuff like that. And so that allowed me to after the game, get some autographs. And so I got the Iceman's autograph when I was a little kid, and, I had his jersey. As far as I was concerned, when the ball was in my hand, I was the Iceman.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was always my guy, definitely. And, in today's game, there's a lot of different guys that I admire. My dad still works for the Sacramento Kings, so it's fun this year that, they have a winning record, and Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox have been really good for the Kings, and they're fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I was growing up in the age of Michael Jordan. That was so many people's favorite guy, and Shaquille O'Neal. But a guy that I liked, and I don't think he gets enough recognition, and you would know this of like, oh yeah, he was a really good player, was Sean Kemp with the Seattle Supersonics.
Oh yeah, I love Sean Kemp. Yeah, the Rain Man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just just a man child. He didn't go to college, came right out of high school, and just had that explosive leaping ability that probably the league hadn't seen since Dominique Wilkins. And so yeah, Sean Kemp was just fantastic.
And it's such a tragedy through all of this. Seattle doesn't have an NBA team anymore.
Oh man, it is. It is. My dad laments that too. Going around to the different cities and stuff. Obviously for many years he has his favorite cities, and he always loved going to Seattle. He always loved going to Vancouver as well.
Sure.
And then they moved to Memphis. But I think Seattle definitely is going to get a team. The collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners, there needs to be a new deal. Once that new deal is made, I think that might open the door to some expansion talks, and I would expect that Las Vegas and Seattle will be the first two places to get NBA teams.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously I'm an Oregon kid, so Portland was good. or like, you know, has always sort of have affiliation there. But I will admit I didn't really watch it that much during the old Portland Blazers era. So that's when I kind of, but you know, like I grew up Clyde Drexler, Jerome Kersey. You know, you know, Buck Williams, those guys.
Terry Porter, all those guys.
Terry Porter, yeah.
Mercy, Jerome Kersey.
yeah.
Kevin Duckworth, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, those were good. Those were good teams, and then they went through a bad phase there, the Rasheed Wallace days, and and cool. Yeah, definitely had some issues.
Yeah, when TSA became a thing, they started to get flagged for some stuff. So I just remember.
Yeah, I remember Damon Sotomayor, not the brightest example.
Yeah,
they're trying to go through TSA with some cannabis in a foil packet.
Yeah,
like Damien.
Yeah.
Or Damon. Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, it wasn't the brightest light bulb in the pack, but those days are gone. But I mean, it was like an everyday occurrence. It seemed like I'd turn on, you know, I'd get ready for school or be, you know, getting a ride to school from my dad, and it's like, and in Trailblazer news, you know, somebody like at an airport or, you know, at a hotel, there was a thrashed hotel or something. It's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yep. That was a rough crew. No doubt about it.
No doubt. What are some it doesn't have to be a top 5. It can be 1, 2, 3, or, you know, however many you want to name. And this is I'll apologize in advance. This is an unfair question as a fellow and answer, but what would you say are some of the favorite races that you've called or just been at and just soaked in the atmosphere?
A couple of them jumped right off the top of my head. One would be, I think it was the 89 Mini Gold Cup at Chico. One of those deals, kind of like I was talking about, where we had a ton of rain in February and leading into like that first week in March, Mini Gold Cup, and the track was really probably not raceable, but we raced anyway because that's just what you did in those days. I mean, there were holes. I remember putting one foot in the hole and lifting my other foot, and it was above my knee, you know, and wide too, just craters. And Brent Kading was in Bob Miller's number 69, and you know, Brent just manhandled his sprint car to a win against good World of Outlaws competition. And so that was definitely one of them. That was one of the best drives I'd seen, because he was just bounding through the rough stuff. Like it was amazing. Another one of my favorites was definitely Fred Raymer winning the Williams Grove National Open on the night that he retired. It was going to be his last one. We were there covering that race for TV, and I've always enjoyed going to the Grove. But to see that win, to see, you know, how wild that place went, to see Raymer win it, you know, in his last race, was really cool. And that track has just always intrigued me, because it's so interesting. If you stand in turn 4 at the Grove and watch those guys, you know, come out of 4, they're barely on the throttle. It's like they're like 15% throttle, I'm guessing, 20% throttle, something like that. Some of the really fast guys, and the other guys who don't have the experience there, they're still trying to, you know, mash and stomp and steer and do stuff like that. And it really is one of those tracks where, you know, your car needs to be geared right, and you need to have that throttle finesse to do it right. And that's why I think you see, you know, Lance DeWeese continue to win there, and the guys who just have that, you know, that local knowledge. It's really a neat place to go to. You know, if anyone who hasn't had a chance to go to the Grove, it might look boring on TV or on a stream, but it's something you should do just to soak in the atmosphere and to see what it's all about. And especially if you can get there for the National Open, you know, right when it starts to get crisp in the fall, it's really, really a cool experience.
Yeah. You see the vapor trails coming off the wings and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole different deal there, man. They love their sprint car racing in Pennsylvania. There's no doubt about it. And everybody there always treated me really well. You know, that was something I was, as a California kid, maybe a little trepidatious going in there my first time, intimidated. But then I found out, man, it's just like everywhere else. It's just a racetrack. It's dirt, and you know, the racers, and they love their Pennsylvania posse.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and you mentioned you worked with TNN for many years. I remember watching you a lot. Let's see, were you working there when it was still Diamond P Motorsports, Steve Evans and that group? Yeah.
Yep.
That's an iconic voice that I remember from my youth, and the production teams that you guys put together for Knoxville Nationals or any race was just immaculate and amazing.
Yeah, I was actually lucky enough. So my dad did some of those Diamond P Nationals events, before I was really old enough to do it. I had started track announcing, but I'd go to the Nationals and work as a production assistant, helping out Brock Yates or Steve Evans or my dad.
Mm-hmm.
They usually separate me from my dad because my dad was pretty plugged into sprint car racing. So
sure.
They figured he could hang on his own, and Brock Yates needed someone who kind of, knew something about sprint cars, because that definitely wasn't his thing. Although he appreciated it, it just wasn't his thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be that guy driving the golf cart, setting up interviews for Brock Yates or Steve Evans, and that was great experience and a lot of fun. That actually allowed me to get to know the guy who was the director for Diamond P, who was John Mullen, and he ended up hiring me then to do a ton of events. We did outlaw events and did some of those, the stuff I mentioned, the
sure.
demo derbies and stuff that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
I did SCCA, road course stuff. Got to see Lime Rock in Mid-Ohio and a bunch of different tracks. I did some NHRA drag racing with John Mullen, things I never thought I would do. I did a season of ASA stock car racing with John Mullen. He really was responsible and really taught me more about television than anybody probably has in my life outside of my dad. But it wasn't always easy. He was an intimidating figure and, an old school TV director, and he was really blunt. And for someone who's sensitive like I am, that could be difficult. So it had its challenges. But mostly it was just about the reason I think I didn't continue to go forward with a lot of that stuff was it just wasn't my love. Like, I always wanted the sprint car racing to be on TV, and I'd always tell those guys, man, why can't, if I could be doing this, putting up with this TV, business BS
mm-hmm.
that you have to put up with, I could probably do it if it was about sprint car racing.
Sure.
And then later on, I got lucky enough to do a bunch of stuff with the Outlaws and so that was usually pretty fun, but I'm sure I made it difficult for some of those people with my, eccentricities and, different things or different, ways that I'm particular about, about certain things. So,
sure.
Whatever, it all comes out in the wash in the end. It's your experience is your experience. And, even though I regret some of that stuff, like I said, there's some of it that I wouldn't trade for the world either, just because it really allowed me to travel, at least in the United States. So actually, we went to Canada and did some stuff at Trois-Rivières. And so actually, I was lucky in that sense to get to see a lot of stuff, even if I couldn't really allow myself to enjoy it often because I was so inside my own head about, being anxious or worrying about, this or that or the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the greatest mystery of life. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or if there is a tomorrow, but, if we knew how everything was going to play out, I think it would be, in a way, less enjoyable, so.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some of that, but then there's also some really real stuff. Like, I didn't know at the time, honestly, there was a long period of time, before I was really diagnosed with anxiety disorder or OCD. I didn't understand what was going on in my brain. And that led to like panic attacks and stuff like that. I remember, one night before, I think it was going to be my first NHRA thing, and it was going to be live. Like, I'd never done an NHRA event in my life and never even, been there to an event. And there, I was going to be working one that weekend. It was in Atlanta. And, man, that night before, I didn't sleep. I remember calling my wife and just, being in a panic. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And I mean, there were seriously some dark times. And then, they got me there, and the first thing they want to do is, let's take you right down to the starting line and put you right next to the Christmas tree. And because they want to initiate you, you know what I mean? And there's nothing that can compare to standing there with two, top fuelers on the line, and they blast off, and the feeling you get in your gut. I mean, it knocks you back. It's incredible to see that. But I just never was comfortable. And it wasn't the people or anything like that. The people were cool. It was just me, being in my own head. I was like, man, this just isn't for me. One of the things I always used to trip off of was they rebuild the engines and stuff, in between NHRA rounds. And that's a lot of time when you'd be doing your interviews. And so you're walking around the cars, and they just finished rebuilding the engine, and they're going to fire it up, and the crew members are wearing gas masks and stuff like that. And, but your producer's telling you, oh no, it's fine. You can visibly see this green stuff, coming out of, and it's like, oh no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. We're just sitting there doing interviews and stuff like that. I was like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah. Those guys look like they're, after a gas attack in World War I, and
right.
You got the microphone, Bobby. Don't worry, you're immune. You're okay.
Exactly.
and you signed the waiver, so.
Exactly, and then like, get closer, Gerald. Get closer to the start line. You're too far away. What if we need to have you interview? The crew chief or something like that. It's like, man, I'm thinking one of these things is going to spit a rod and kill all of us.
Sure. Yeah. If this freaking tire goes off on a burnout, like some of us our hair aren't going to be looking right.
And they eventually did change some of those rules. Like, now they keep the I guess the cameraman gets pretty. He's the one that can get pretty close, but everybody else, they finally did put some rules to it. But, I guess I was ahead of the game in my own head at that point, thinking, man, this just isn't safe.
Yeah.
So
the Bobby Gerould Doctrine, I'm sure, is what they call it.
Right. So anyway, I did like 4 NHRA events, and then, and true story, they offered me a full season of it, being the pit guy, and I turned it down. And actually, I told John Mullen when I turned it down, I was like, the dude who needs to do this is Dave Reef. Like Dave loves drag racing. Like, he'd be at the sprint car races talking about drag racing.
Sure.
Where I was at the drag races talking about sprint car racing.
Yeah.
And so they had us screwed up. You know what I mean? It was just like, give the job to Dave. And it worked out great, I think, for Dave Reef. So
yeah.
And Dave deserved it. It's not, I don't want to make it sound like it was me gifting. I mean, Dave deserved it from the beginning. They should have called him before me.
Yeah. No, yeah. And he does an outstanding job in any form that he does. And
he does.
He's an amazing individual.
He does. He really has a fun personality. He's fun to be around. I know after I was doing some stuff in the booth with the Outlaws, and that would require some post-production work. You'd have to go to Charlotte and do stuff. And I don't know what happened there, but maybe I wore out my welcome. Yeah. I'm not sure, but I know at some point someone did say, well, Dave's so much fun in the studio and around the crew. And it was kind of like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? I take the point. He's just a lot more personable and willing to do stuff than I was. Sometimes I'd have too many questions, too smart for my own good.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, what I really enjoyed too during the TNN days with the World of Outlaws, not to take anything, not slamming Dirt Vision, CBS Sports, or ESPN, any coverage that they've done since then. It was just, me as a kid, right? 10, 12 years old, and just, it was seeing these guys that I would come to Cottage Grove Speedway, and seeing them in real life. And then it was like, oh my gosh, like because my mom really didn't go to the races. I know this person, like I have his card or I have his die cast and stuff. And it was so like, it seemed like so in your face. And then they had a computer game eventually. And not to say that was the peak by any means, because the peak may have yet to be found with that, but it was just such a cool time.
No, I agree with that for sure. And I think the one thing that TV classic television, network television, cable television did better to this day is they told the stories better. And that's just taking the time,
Sure.
there might have been a trip to Carl Kinzer's shop in the middle of the week
Mm-hmm.
where they spent a whole day there and did a feature story and then edited it down and did the writing and came up with a tidy little 3-minute package that then made you feel that much closer to the Kinzers.
Sure.
And that's something that's missing in today's, in today's live streams that there's still a lot of downtime,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure they make enough money.
Sure.
So I'd love to see them spend some of that money on producing those kind of deals, where it's like, let's tell some stories, let's dig into where David Gravel lives and what makes him tick, and
Yeah.
or Sheldon Hodenshield and his dog and his wife and how they get down the road together, or
Sure.
whatever it is. I just think all those little kind of slice of life features are things that can make the audience really care about drivers.
Yeah, content seems to be a major driving force with a lot of some people that I've worked with. Is they're like, get content, just go out, get contact, have a camera guy
Yep.
follow you around, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, it makes it from, basically from being, the thing I've always told myself, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. And if you give it that little extra, it makes the world of a difference.
Oh, absolutely. And I get it. It's a grind.
Sure.
These guys are going up and down the road, 80, 100 times a year. And sometimes you do just want to, it's enough of a grind to just get there, get set up and do the job. And time doesn't allow for it
Mm-hmm.
in some instances. But I'd love to see, then let's dedicate some other resources to it and make it happen with some other people who aren't on the road full time, to get that kind of stuff done. There's always a way.
Well, and that'll do it for part 1 with this incredible interview with Bobby Gerould. Stay tuned, because coming up soon will be the release of part 2. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this latest episode of Getting Up to Speed with me, Ben Dethridge. We hope you enjoyed this program. We hope also that you hit the subscribe button and the like button, as that really helps things out, spreads things out. Be sure and share as well on social media so that more people can listen to these great interviews and from these great drivers. Getting Up to Speed is a production of Highside Racing Promotions. For more information, you can check it all out on Facebook at Highside Promotions.